Dr. Ruby Payne, Chapter 6 of Emotional Poverty, Book 2. This is about parenting. And as I said in the introduction, I think that the way we approach parenting in the school business is not very effective because we think, oh, it's a cognitive activity, and no, it's not. It's an emotional activity. And as I said earlier, if you've ever been a parent, you understand that gut-wrenching angst that parenting can bring to you. And people parent typically either in one of two ways, either in reaction to the way they were parented or the way they were parented. And what we understand is that those then show up in how we parent our own children. So this is a brain-based, emotional way to look at how parents parent and what we can do to facilitate that process and make it more beneficial. So the first part we look at in this chapter is this whole concept of implicit bias. And I mentioned that earlier, and there's a chart in your book on page 137, because implicit bias is so much there. And there's a lot of conversation about race and implicit bias, and that of course is there. In fact, the research is that skin color is one of the things people notice first. But there's so many other things that you register, like for example, cleanliness. Another one is smell. Another one is boots and shoes, interestingly enough. Another one is clothing. Another one is language. Can they use formal register? Can they use the language of school? Okay. Are they educated? Huge bias against people who are not educated. Are they, are they part of a particular religion? And one of the things that happens is these all things translate. The handshake, when you could handshake. But the bottom line is they all become part of bias on both sides, both the educator and the teacher. And so how do you get around bias? Well, one of the things that becomes critically important is that you develop a relationship. And there's institutional bias, okay? Are people glad to see you? Okay, or are you not welcome? Are the doors all locked and you don't know which to get into? And a lot of schools are locked for safety. As a matter of fact, when I go present at a school, one of the first questions I ask is, how do I get in? Because it's part of the reality now. But there are all kinds of indicators. Are you welcome? Are you not? And what do they see when they look at the educator? How do you think about that? And then how do you build a relationship with them? And there's a whole process in here about how you establish rapport, how you begin to ask questions. There's all this research on invitational language. Invitational language is phrases and words you can use that invite information rather than directly ask. For example, one of them is, help me understand. Can you help me understand? I wondered. Another one is, if you were ruler of the universe, how would you like to have this resolved? One of them that's really used a lot in the sales industry is, what can I do for you now? And what you're looking at is how you build that relationship. And then you want to move into finding solutions. So you're looking for arenas that there might be a solution in. And it's a process of getting to yes, if you will. How do you build that foundation so that you can eventually get to yes? And then we want to look at things like kinds of questions. If you want to know brain-based and you want to know emotionally and you want to know, are they parenting like they were parented or a different way, one of the questions you might ask after the relationship is established is, what do you think is one of the most important things a parent does? And you can begin to understand then their frames of reference emotionally for dealing with their own child. If you go in the book, there's a chart on page 144 and 145 of things you look for, questions you can ask, who's going to require extra time from you, and then how do you stay out of the Karpman triangle? And the Karpman triangle is on page 141. It's one of my very favorite tools to deal with parents. And the rule about the Karpman triangle is this. And if you know about the triangle, you have the bully, you have the rescuer, and you have the victim. If you've ever had a parent come into you and say, I just don't know what to do about Johnny, well, you got a victim. And they're asking you to rescue them. If they come in and cuss you out and tell you how awful you are, then you got a bully, okay? And so what we find is that if you get in that triangle with a parent, you will take on all three roles, and more importantly, you will never actually solve the problem. Let me give you an example. I had a father who came into me and he said, you will do something about his daughter was a fourth grader, her name was Kate, and she was beautiful. And he said, Brandon is sexually harassing her. I want you to promise me that he will never get within speaking distance of her again. Well, he's coming in as rescuing his daughter, who he sees as a victim, and he's going to do it by bullying me. Well, you don't want to get in that triangle. So the way you stay out is you ask questions. So I thanked him for coming to see me. I said, thank you for coming to see me. I take sexual harassment very seriously. I said, I would like to ask you a couple questions if I might. And I said, please understand that Brandon, of course, has rights too. He has access to due process as well. I said, but I'm very concerned about this issue. So I said, can you tell me when this is happening? He said, well, actually, no, I'm not sure. I said, can you tell me exactly what Brandon is saying? He said, I don't know. And I said, do you know what Kate's reaction is to that? He said, I don't know. I said, let's call Kate in and find out. Well, it was happening during recess. He was saying things to her. I said to Kate, so what do you do when he says those things? And she said, well, I smile at him. Well, I thought her dad was going to kill her, okay? I said, Kate, you have to tell him you don't like it. Because when you smile at him, he thinks it's okay. So let's get our signals correct here. I said, I'm going to work with Brandon. He can't say those things, okay? But I don't want him encouraged either, okay? So I said, you have to tell him you don't like it. And she said, well, I can't say that. And her dad said, yes, you can. So we sent her back to the classroom, and then I said to the father, look, your daughter is absolutely beautiful. I said, I am going to work with Brandon, but she's going to have other unwanted advances. I said, don't you think it'd be very important that she also have skills to deal with these unwanted advances? I said, what are you going to do when she's in high school and you're not with her? I said, it's important for Kate. And he said, yes, it is. He said, look, I'll work with her. I said, I'm going to work with Brandon. And if anything else happens, I want you to call me and I'll work on it again. We'll take care of it. But I said, we have to make sure that this does not happen again. That is staying out of a triangle. And it's one of the ways that you can have a better impact. The last thing in this chapter is a form you can fill out to have a parent-teacher conference, a better one. I used to say to my staff when I was a principal, if you're going to call them and just tell them everything the child did wrong and have no solutions, please, that's not beneficial for anyone. So let's work what we want at the end of the conference. Let's plan the end in mind. Let's look at the data we're going to bring. What questions are we going to ask? How are we going to look at resolution? We'll be much more successful. So I hope this chapter on parenting will help you reframe the many dialogues we have. Thank you so much for that.